Roll call, please.
Bruce Johnson. Here. Bill Conley.
Here.
Todd Kimmelshoe.
Here.
Bo Shepherd.
Here.
Wade Kirchner.
Here.
Charlie Hoppin.
Yes.
Drew Stresser. On the phone. Lackfair Gog.
Here.
Mike Morris.
Here.
Chris Schmidl.
Here. Okay, I've asked Chris to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you. Public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to address the Sutter Buttes Flood Control Agency's Board of Directors on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Any member of the audience who may wish to bring a matter before the board that has not been placed on the agenda may do so at this time. However, state law provides that no action may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Do we have any comments from the public? No.
I just don't know what you're missing, Wade.
I think we should ask for a wave out there.
Okay. Consent calendar. The consent calendar groups together those items which are considered non-controversial or for which prior policy direction has been given to staff that require only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that the matters may be adopted in total by one motion. However, the board may, at its option or upon request of a member of the public, consider any matter separately. So I'll bring that item back to the board for action.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Informational and possible approval items. Number 11, presentation of and file monthly financial report.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the board, Seth Wurzel, Agency Budget Manager. So this is our regular monthly report. So we're sitting with about 22.2 million up to date. There's quite a few entries and work that's taken place since the preparation of the board packet and the materials, so this is reflective of that. We've got about 750,000 in revenue from last year, which is I've reported, and nothing yet from this year as of July 31st. The capital revenue for the year, about 16.5 million for last fiscal year, and about 3 million to date for this fiscal year. That negative revenue because of posting of interest and accrual back to the prior fiscal year as of July. But again, the 3 million in revenue to date is reflective of quite a bit of work we've done, making claims and reimbursements to our granting agencies in this fiscal year. So the difference in 6.5 million between basically the current year revenues, the 12 minus the $1,100 versus the 16.5 and 3 million. That difference of 6 million is reflected in here. This is our laundry list, the state payments and the status of those. I've reported on the revenues for fiscal year 21-22, a little over 6.2 million, and nothing really to date for 22-23 as would be expected in terms of assessment revenues. The bills haven't even gone out yet. Property tax bills will hit property owners' mailboxes sometime in October. Maybe a little late this year in working with the county. We understand they have a new property tax system, and so in Sutter County, they'll likely come in just before the end of October. And then the first payment's due in December and April, second payment in April. In terms of our working capital financing, our expenditures last year, capital expenses, 5.3 million through July of 22. And then you can see where we've spent most of the money last year was again on the sediment removal project and the OWA project work. Not a whole lot spent this year in terms of expenditures, primarily, work on the OWA projects and finishing those up. Our financing, our next debt service payment is due in October, 3.8 million combined between their two debt series. And then in terms of kind of current financial activities, really pushing forward on closeout of the UFR project, meeting the December 2022 deadline to make all claims. And so we've processed quite a bit of real estate reimbursements and things like that. Those are the things that are taking the longest. And then closing out all of our other remaining grants. Work by LWA and the agency and kind of at a high level going forward. Continuing to support the administration of the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority. On their agenda, they will be considering an amendment to the services agreement with Sutter Butte to address repayment after the successful passage of the assessment district, and we'll bring that back to this board in October after consideration by Fralifa later today. The regional levy impact fee coordinating with the member agency, land use agencies. We've got that updated study finalized, and our primary focus is on agency outreach with staff to work through carrying out the board's direction was provided several months ago to work with the land use agencies to implement a development impact fee. And then a lot of work has been going on coordinating with DWR and the Center Bypass East Levee project, coordinating on applications for funding, construction funding for that. Our annual audit for 21-22 is kicked off, and we'll be bringing that to the board likely late in December or early January. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any comments or questions, happy to answer them.
Do we have any receivables that are overdue or being disputed, or is everything flowing the way they've been billed?
In terms of our assessment bills, no, not that I'm aware of. A lot of that is handled by Wildan.
But not just the assessment, the stuff that we expect from DWR and other agencies.
No. Essentially, when we work through claims processes, we'll be presenting a laundry list of invoices and expenses the agencies incurred, making a payment request, and there may be some minor costs and expenses there. Generally, the perspective is if it's a minor amount of money, if they're saying, hey, that $100 is not eligible, it's not worth our time to try to go back and forth on that. It's usually the higher policy issues, and at this point in time, the process has been worked out. There were discrepancies early on at a high level, like this type of expense would not be eligible, and that was 10 years ago when we first got the grant. We worked through all those, so it's generally, we just didn't, there was a direct expense from a vendor that is not eligible or too high, and it's usually just move on to the next thing.
Thank you.
Chris, thanks for a good report.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments from the board? Okay. Number 12, presentation and file program project update.
Okay, good afternoon, members of the board. Michael Bissett here. It's been a couple of months since I've seen you all, so it's great to see you in person. We have a lot of activities going on, so I'm going to update the board on all the various activities. As you can see from the agenda, we had a lot of items on our consent calendar, and that's good. So we're going to move all of those items forward now that the board approved them. Starting out with Feather River West Levee Project 1, which, as the board is aware, it's Star Bend North. It's pretty much the completed project. We have the 2nd Street encroachments, vegetation removal and fenced installation project. So the board just awarded that construction contract today to Eshman Construction. So we'll be sending them a signed contract and get those back along with bonds and insurance, and then be able to issue a notice to proceed. So we're hoping to start that project within the next couple of weeks with a construction completion date of November 15th. So we'll be going pretty active construction here starting out in the next couple of weeks. On the environmental and cultural resources mitigations front, so our legal counsel, Andrea Clark here, and myself are working closely with Sac Valley Conservancy on setting up the Star Bend and Matthews mitigation sites in terms of, they're already built out, but in terms of transferring the management responsibilities over to Sac Valley Conservancy. So we're getting very close to finalizing that process. On cultural resources, our consultant, Far Western, as a sub to ICF, they just completed the draft mitigation reports, and those are under review internally, and we'll be sending those over to the Army Corps. So that'll finalize that whole cultural resources mitigation process once it goes through the Army Corps' review and approval process. So we're looking forward to completing that, but the bulk of the work now has been completed. And it's actually a fascinating report, so I'll make those public when they're ready to go to prime time. I'll make those available on our website and let the board know, because it really documents the history of the Native American populations in this area over time, and then gets into project-specific impacts of what resources were encountered during our projects. So I'll let you know when those are ready to be reviewed. The O&M manuals, that's been a long, ongoing process through the Army Corps of Engineers. We finally completed that process, and it's going before, those manuals are going before the Central Valley Flood Protection Board for approval on September 23rd, so that Friday later this month. So we're excited to have that completed, and then those manuals will get transferred to the local maintaining agencies. On the right-of-way transfer to the state, so all of those properties, over 100 individual properties that we've acquired, parcels of those parcels, pieces of those parcels, we'll be transferring those over to the state of California, to specifically the Sacramento-San Joaquin Drainage District. That's the legal entity that holds property for the state in these floodways. So the resolution that was passed today under consent will allow me to sign off on those transfer documents and any other project closeout documents that come our way through the state. So we're getting close to that process itself. Let's see, FERLIP 2, the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project.
Michael, real quickly,
Yes.
just on that last topic.
Yes,
Those are properties that are basically where the levee runs. Is that right?
correct. So
How far on each side of the levee would you say?
great question. I know exactly. So in most cases, it's 20 feet in fee on the land side, an additional 10 feet in easement, so for a total of 30 feet on the land side, and then 15 feet in fee on the water side, and then all the land underneath the levee prism itself. So it was a pretty wide corridor, because oftentimes we found property owners actually own the levee. And in some cases, neither the state or the LMA had the legal authority to maintain the levee. I mean, they did it because that was their job, but they didn't have legal rights to be on there in some cases. Not in most cases, but in some cases. But it was interesting to find out how much private property actually owned the levees.
And so this entity, I guess it's not a new entity, SSJDD. I don't know how you say that if it's an acronym, but anyway.
Nope.
They're responsible for maintaining the levees from this point on, is it?
No. So they'll just own the fee title or the easement. But LD9, LD1, the
Okay.
state maintenance areas, they'll continue to maintain the levees.
That's their job.
Right. But now they have the legal rights to be on there in all cases.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good question. On the Lower Feather River West Levee improvement, that 1.6 miles, that's the remainder of the Feather River that needs to be improved. We're in active design now on that project. We're expecting to have 65% designs completed in right around the November timeframe. And then Chris Fritz and his company will package that 65% design package into an encroachment permit, submit that to the Central Valley Board, and that'll trigger the Army Corps' 408 review process. So that's the process that we have to go through to get our plans reviewed and approved by both the state and the Army Corps. So we've completed some geotechnical explorations to date. We had our AECOM is our geotechnical engineer. They went out and did some additional borings to further define where the cutoff wall and how deep that cutoff wall would be or needs to be. We also initiated the AB 52 consultations, which is Assembly Bill 52. That's the Native American process that we go through with associated tribes in the area. So we had those one or two consultations so far. It triggered a field visit by United Auburn Indian Community representatives. So we're advancing those discussions with UAIC is their acronym or their initials. So that process is going well. So we're excited about that. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have Sutter Bypass East Levee repairs. So the 5.2 miles, pretty much centered along where the Tisdale Weir comes into the Sutter Bypass. Our project essentially is bisected by where that Tisdale Weir comes in. And so today, what under consent was the agreement, the funding agreement with DWR. So that is going to allow myself to sign those funding agreements in the amount of $4 million from the state to advance that design and permitting effort. So we're very excited about that. We expect the final documents to come from DGS within a month or less, we're hoping. So as soon as they come my way, we'll get them reviewed by our legal attorneys, and we'll sign off on those and get going on the project. We're finalizing RFP for that project. It's a request for proposals for design services. So we're going to go open and competitive for new design teams to propose on that project. So we'll be sending out that RFP in the next week or so. And then we'll be going through an interview process, and then we would be taking a recommendation back to this board. We're thinking in November. That's kind of the time frame that we're setting. Or maybe it was, Chris, was that December or November? December. So later this year, we'll come back with a recommendation for a design team. In the meantime, we'll be doing the reviews of the proposals we receive, conducting interviews, doing the rankings, and then making a recommendation to the board. We're also coordinating directly with DWR on submitting for a FEMA grant for construction. So we're fine-tuning a notice of intent, which gets submitted to Cal OES. And that needs to be submitted by this Friday. So I'm coordinating closely with DWR. They need to approve that submittal because it's their facility. They own it and they maintain it. So they have to give us the green light to go after those federal dollars. If the notice of intent is approved by Cal OES, then we would finalize a formal submittal to FEMA. So that's going to take a long process, but we would be applying for the full amount of construction costs, which is in the high $40 million range. And FEMA, if they accept it, they would fund up to 75%. So it's worth a shot, and we're going to go after it pretty aggressively. OWA Robinson's Riffle project. So we were successful in receiving a DWR grant. That's I highlighted that in the program project update staff report. That's a $1.1 million grant. It could get a little higher depending on cost share negotiations. But we're excited about that. So that's going to be it's a planning grant. So we'll start all of the planning work, reaching out to all the stakeholders, conducting stakeholder meetings where we get input from the various interests up in that area and further define a project to kind of build upon all the good work we did in the Unit D area of the Orville Wildlife Area. So we're excited about that. We're also applying for Wildlife Conservation Board grant that would fund design and permitting, and we may go after construction too. We'll just have to see where we're at in the process in terms of that grant. And we're also working with the NIFWIF entity that has about $6.2 million in mitigation money. And we've identified a project in the Orville Wildlife Area, and we're coordinating directly with staff over there to see if we can't make a project happen. So a lot of work going on up in the Orville Wildlife Area.
I know that Bill and I appreciate your work up in there and your tenacity to try and get grant funding to put together design and hopefully construction, because not much is going on in Butte County, and we appreciate that. And well, just appreciate the fact that you're going after that as hard as you are.
That's great. Thank you. And we have a lot of support from DWR staff and CDFW staff up there. So we're working as a team as we advance these grant applications and project definitions. And so it's been a real good working process up there. Let's see, sediment removal. Unfortunately, we haven't been successful in identifying or getting funding for that project. As the board is aware, our permits are good up until 2026. So we still have a few more years to identify a grant and be successful in getting that grant or getting into a state budget line item. So we're working very closely with Senator Nielsen and Assemblyman Gallagher, their staffs. Our state lobbyist is identifying, and he's going to be setting up meetings with all of the state agencies that have been given pretty good budgets for grants in the near-term future. So we'll be setting up, one-on-one meetings with those agencies and then talking about this project and trying to sell it to the various reviewers of those grants. So all of that's happening right now.
Michael,
Yes.
just out of curiosity, is it because we work on the levees? Is that what's kind of holding this up?
No, it's not anything to do with Sbfca itself. It's just the project hasn't resonated with these granting agencies. I mean, we were successful in the first go around where we got $5 million from the Natural Resources Agency, but applying for these competitive grants, it just hasn't risen to the level where we've been selected. So,
Okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with our agency, though.
Okay.
Our agency only helps because they know that we're successful in building out projects.
Okay, is the way how the settlement is and everything.
Right. No, it's a good question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have locations been established as to where the sediment would be removed, or is this all up and down the Feather River?
No, it's right. We identified it when we first submitted for our permits. We had the Yuba City boat ramp, the Live Oak boat ramp,
Which got completed, right?
and those got completed. But also, so the remainder, what we call phase 2, it's right there at the confluence of the Feather and the Yuba. There's a big, large, pretty much island right there at the confluence that we're trying. That's the area we've identified for phase 2.
Bill, has on the Feather River, just south of the dam where all the sediment came through, has that been cleaned out, or we still need some help there as well?
No, they dredged everything in front of the spillway where it broke all the way down through the diversion pool. But yeah, there's sediment in the river, but where it really hit is down here. They already had a buildup, so just adding to it, you can wade across the river down here. It just seems like that's going to impede flood flows. It's going to impede fish to spawn, and it's hurting the sport fisheries down here.
Yeah.
So we support the efforts to clean it up there. We just don't have quite the same problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you don't have a flat bottom boat, you're not getting through the river too much for fishing around here.
Next high water will blow right out. Maybe about 10 years.
All right, the last bullet on this slide.
Blow it out as a big old dredge on top of a raft myself, but wishful thinking. No, that's the plan. That's what they do. They literally let them sediment up and force you to raise the levees. I mean, you can't make it up. That's another day's talk, and thanks for waking me up.
On the last bullet on this slide is the regional flood management planning. So we're actively working on what we call RFMP, and we have the phase 3 grant that's through Trillia, but now we're kind of helping manage that process. And we have a steering committee made up of folks from the Yuba Water Agency, RD 784, and Marysville Levee Commission, and RD 1001. So we're working. These are projects of interest through RFMP that we're advancing. So the one, the Cherokee Canal, I know is of interest to the Butte County folks, and we had a meeting this morning with DWR. We continue to have meetings with them to DWR was successful in getting $22 million of deferred maintenance money. So we're meeting with them and helping them advance that project. And also, one of the RFMPs was for the Richvale community. They put together a draft feasibility study. So we talked about that, and that includes an analysis of Cherokee Canal and what improvements need to be made to provide 100-year protection to that small community. So it's a good exchange of information, and we set up a meeting for November 2nd. To help further advance DWR's effort to clean up that channel and do improvements out there.
Would it be appropriate if I asked to attend those, or is that not on the,
They're just staff level. I think it'd be better not to have you there because
just the way you feel about me.
I think DWR staff feels very comfortable sharing information.
Oh, they don't want elected officials
at a staff
there.
level.
Okay, got it. Okay.
But Barry O'Regan,
Keep doing what you're doing, Michael.
Barry O'Regan did mention your name today, and they're going to be bringing the feasibility study back to the Butte County Board, whether it's through staff or just through the chair. However that's going to happen, but we'll be communicating information.
Because Richvale's important. There's at least 250 votes there for me, so
Okay.
Just want to let you know.
Absolutely. Phase 4 is the...
So on, it's a 25-year level of protection now, right? So to increase it to 100-year that's pretty significant. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to get to that level. Who knows what it's going to take. I mean, I think the cost estimate was like $75 million or something like that to provide 100-year level. Obviously it'll be a phased improvement project, but that is the goal. Yep. Last here is the phase 4 grant. So Sbfca will be the administrator of that grant that we received from DWR. This phase 4 round is only for $260,000. So we have identified some projects, pretty much continuing on with the projects that we're working on, and then also funding the LAFCO process for LD1 to Annex MA3. So that's like a regional governance type process that we can use that money for. So, and then the other RFMP members have projects identified also. But from what we hear, around 5 will be coming out next summer for a much larger amount. So we're looking forward to that. And it also, this RFMP money helps pay for our time to participate in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan update, and that happens every 5 years. And this year is an update year, so that's going before, that plan update is going before the Central Valley Board in October, I believe. October or November, it's coming up. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the last slide. So for the federal project, the Tudor to Cypress Avenue Army Corps project, we're still closely coordinating with the Corps on punch list work. They've been going back and forth with their contractor. We have what we call a PDT, a project development team meeting on Thursday this week. So I'll hear how the contractor has responded to the request to make repairs. So that's, it's sort of outside of my control, but I'm involved in the process to help advance that effort. We're also advancing the federal crediting effort. LWA, our consultant, puts together those crediting packages, and we submit those to the Army Corps for their review and approval. And ultimately, we're thinking we're going to be having right around $27 million in federal credit, and we want to negotiate a deal with Sbfca to sell that credit because we can't utilize that federal credit in our basin. So that work is ongoing. We're going to be setting up timelines for perfecting of the credits and better understanding Sbfca's timeline for trying to utilize and purchase those credits. So more work to come on that, and I'll keep the board apprised. Yes.
That $27 million thing, didn't we already approve that you could negotiate? Isn't there some, you can sell for 80% or some,
So
months ago,
yeah, so you were approved, getting together, forming an ad hoc to be able to do that negotiation. We haven't done that yet. So we're still perfecting credits and still setting up the framework for undertaking that negotiation. Yep. Let's see, on FEMA remapping of Sutter County, that draft package went to our independent panel of experts for review. We're addressing some comments we received back. Our team, through Chris's management, will be finalizing that package, and we'll be sending that to FEMA. We saw our FEMA Region 9 representative at the FMA conference last week in downtown Sacramento, and we gave him a heads up that this is coming FEMA's way very soon. And once it gets submitted, like I've notified the board in the past, it's going to take a minimum of 3 years to get through that process, more likely upwards to 5 years. It just takes a long time. It's a much more complicated package than the Butte County package, which was just recently approved, last year. And that took 3 years. So we're thinking we're right around that time frame. And then there'll be more public outreach. Once that process gets to FEMA, then that triggers some public outreach meetings. So all of that will be coming in the next year or two. On the regional development impact fee, this was approved by the board to have staff complete a nexus study and go out and meet with our member agencies, our member land use agencies, to try to put together a regional impact fee related to levee improvements. So whenever, each of these land use agencies have development impact fees, and they have different components to that fee package, we want to get a levee fee component in there. Yuba City used to have one. They've transferred money over to Sbfca that they've collected to date, and they've since rescinded their impact fee until this regional fee is put in place by all of the members. So we've had some good meetings just recently because Seth's company updated the Nexus study to comply with recent laws. We've had some good outreach. I'll be meeting hopefully with City of Live Oak and City of Gridley in very near term. I'm communicating with the city managers to set that up, and we'll keep advancing that effort. And then let's see, lastly, on the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority, so that's the JPA that was formed between LD1, LD9, and Sutter County. As we've notified the board, that Prop 218 election was successful last June. So now we're working with the Financing Authority board to get that process in place and set up the agency for the future. So one of the items on consent was to approve a minor amendment with the HDR Wildan team to finalize their contract. It's also going to set up the Sbfca to help manage the Financing Authority for the next year and a half, until they have all the systems underway and it can manage itself on its own. And that Financing Authority will reimburse Sbfca for all of the costs that we've laid out to make that a successful Prop 218 election. So that is the end of my presentation for this month. I'll turn it back to the chair and see if there's any questions from the board.
Comments or questions from the board? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, then I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Ayes have it.